fellow book readers at the Formed Book Club. Our final session on Sex and the Catholic Feminist. It's a wonderful book by Sue Ellen Browder, who is actually with us, and you will see her momentarily. In fact, there you go. You should see her right now. She's in the lower right-hand corner of my screen. I'm not sure where she's up on your screen, but I hope it's the same place. So, Vivian in San Francisco, sheltered in. Father Fessio in San Francisco, sheltered in separately. Joseph, are you still sheltered there?
Relatively.
What does that mean?
Well, I don't think it's quite as strict here as it is where you are.
Oh, okay. Well, you also have about an acre or two on your land, so you can
Thanks be to God.
They do let you go outside your house. And Sue Ellen, you're in Northern California, right?
No, I'm in Wyoming, and I am not.
Oh, Wyoming. Oh, my gosh.
I'm not sheltered in.
Very good. So we're all here together. Vivian and Joseph and I have last 3 weeks discussed this book, Sex and the Catholic Feminist. So we had kind of a summary session today, and I want to pass the ball over to Joseph Pearce, who is marvelous at formulating questions. So, Joseph, would you get us started?
I'm much better at formulating questions than answering them, Father. So
well, that's what Sue Ellen is here for. So
I'm leaving.
Right, exactly. No, we should have an evening, very easy time today because we get Sue Ellen to do all the work.
Yes. All right.
So, yeah, Sue. So I mean, there's an awful lot we could talk about, of course, and we have discussed that for the last 3 weeks. The marvelous things in your book. But one thing that I know that you have somewhere that you can talk about or show us is the means by which Helen Gurley Brown, the founder of Cosmopolitan, actually encouraged her writers, her journalists, to make things up, pretend them to be non-fiction. So could you perhaps say something about that?
Well, she had a list of rules on how to make up stories, and I kept it for 50 years. I could not find it when I wrote my previous book, Subverted, but I found it in the garage, and here it is. I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is a 50-year-old list of rules on how to lie to the American public.
How many pages is it?
It's 17 pages.
Okay.
It's not all about lies. It's just about some of the things in here are lies. For example,
Could you give us some of the more egregious,
right?
Could you give us some of the more egregious highlights?
Here's one. In case histories, which means a story you made up, when talking about a civilian, a non-celebrity, give her a name, but don't mention it immediately. And then there's the way to do this. You're not supposed to tell her, you marry a 27-year-old daughter of a psychiatrist. Bad, that's bad. You're supposed to say, one 27-year-old girl, the daughter of a psychiatrist. And later you tell her, quote, name, which is not, she doesn't have a real name, you made her up. Okay. Number 25, try to locate some of the buildings, restaurants, nightclubs, parks, streets, as well as entire case histories in cities other than New York, even if you deliberately have to plant them elsewhere. Most writers live in New York. 92% of our readers do not. Okay, so you're going to plant some stories there. You're going to make them up. Don't be relentlessly depressing. If subject matter of an article is downbeat per se, as in women in prison, search out the positive efforts being made to improve the situation. Avoid attacking advertisers, cosmetics, liquor, bra and girdle, etc. And where convenient, mention advertised brands rather than the non-advertised competition. Etc., etc., etc. We were urged to be the big sister talking to the little sister, and that was the tone of Cosmo. We know we were going to tell you how to do it, and that's how we lied to the American public.
Well, Sue Ellen, C.S. Lewis, during the Second World War, said about spies in England, be assured there are spies in England, but discount every story you have that someone is a spy, because there's so many spy stories going around. I've always been skeptical about conspiracy theories because, first of all, it's hard to people to get together and do things, in common without it being known. But when you describe in this book the meeting that Helen Gurley had in New York with all the editors of the women's magazines and deciding we're going to publish articles this month that promote abortion, I mean, that is a conspiracy. I mean, that's what a conspiracy is. And especially when you think about New York, who's getting its punishment now, I suppose. But I mean, as the media center for print, of the country, if not the world, getting the editors of all the well-known women's magazines together and deciding together, we are going to promote this view, which is a lie. I mean, that's really shocking. Well, it shouldn't be, I suppose, but it is shocking.
Your father, the thing of it is, they didn't think it was a lie. They had been convinced that this was the path to women's freedom, was abortion.
Well, wait, Sue Ellen,
they didn't know.
You mean to say that even though this woman is in New York, we're going to put her in Wisconsin? That's not a lie?
Yeah. Well, I know. No, Helen Gurley Brown knew it was a lie. But when all those women got together in New York, they didn't know they were conspiring. I agree with you. It was a conspiracy, but they didn't know it. They just had a group think. They just thought this is the way the world is. Yeah. I know, but yeah.
Well, there is a difference, I think, between a conspiracy, which is a group of people getting together to serve their own interests and trying to act in a way which the people they're acting upon don't know about. And a lie, which is deliberately saying something which is untrue. So I think it was definitely, as Father said, a conspiracy, but the people there believed they were doing something which was, in quotes, true.
Well, how about all
good for women? Yeah.
But how about their, you go over those rules again, Sue Ellen, but how about all their saying, we want to present these young women as having happy, and this is the life that makes you better, and it fulfills you, and so on, when they knew that it wasn't true.
Okay, now we've got two different stories here. Cosmo was lying, yes.
Yeah,
the ladies that all got together for that meeting to promote abortion didn't know necessarily that Cosmo was lying. You see what I mean? See, we've got Cosmo lying. Yes, that was definitely a lie and definitely a conspiracy. These ladies all got together, thought they were telling the truth. They weren't. But it was a different milieu, if you will. No, Cosmo was lying.
But wouldn't you say that one sort of led to the other? I mean,
sure.
The Cosmo lifestyle that was being promoted, which was, female success on male terms. And once you buy into that, aren't you then going to see that logically you need to have abortion as your escape from pregnancy, because that's the one thing that's going to pull you out of the game on an even footing with men?
That's what they thought. Yeah, that's what
they thought. And you can see why they thought that, because they were measuring success strictly from a kind of male fantasy point of view.
Exactly.
You make all this money, you have all this status, you have all the pleasure you want, you don't have the responsibilities you don't want. Well, when a woman tries to live like that and ends up pregnant, that's a big problem with that lifestyle. And,
yes,
it makes perfect sense that they would think that the sacrifice of the child is the necessary price to pay to keep living that way.
Right.
What, Sue Ellen, I'm very naive here. Does Cosmopolitan still exist? And if so, what is it promoting right now?
It's even worse than it was then. It's very pornographic now. Very pornographic.
Yeah.
Really? You can see something of its editorial approach. I'd be interested to see a survey, but I don't think that Cosmopolitan ever has a new issue without the word sex prominently displayed as one of the features that's going to be found therein. So that's just part of it. What it does is it's going to lure people in with the quasi pornographic.
I remember being in the grocery line with my kids when they were little and wishing that Cosmo was one of those magazines that by law was supposed to have the brown paper over it.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
it is pornographic. The headlines, the cover images, I mean, was one of those things I wish my children didn't have to see.
Well, Cosmo was a Playboy clone. It was a clone of Playboy. Helen Gurley Brown went to Hugh Hefner and got some of his writers, his agents. She copied. It was a female Playboy, is what it was.
Yes.
Sue Ellen, I mean, you worked for quite a long time, both in the staff and then as a stringer or as a freelancer for
Right.
Cosmopolitan and other magazines. Was your coming to the light something that was rather sudden, or did it take place over a decade or so? Or what was the process by which you began to see that this was deceitful?
Well, I knew it was deceitful from the beginning. I didn't think
Okay.
anybody would. I didn't think. Well, I mean, if you're lying and you've got a list of lies, you're lying, right?
Okay, all right, yeah.
I didn't think anybody would believe it. Okay, that's what I told myself. Oh, this is just a game. Nobody's going to believe this stuff. And it wasn't until after I became a Catholic in 2003 that I realized the damage that had done. And that's when I wrote Subverted, the book. I said, I've got to come clean with this. And that's when I wrote that, and I wrote this other book to continue that process.
Okay, but so you're writing things that you know are lies, but you think it's for a good cause or it's fun. People aren't going to believe them. But then in 2003, you became a Catholic, but was that a sudden thing, a bolt of lightning like St. Paul, or was it a gradual process, or what led you to realize that these lies were the wrong thing to do?
It was a gradual process. I was searching for truth in the world. I didn't know the truth as a person, which is Christ himself. I didn't know that. I was searching for truth. So I had gone to a good journalism school, and I was told the people have a right to know. And I left Cosmopolitan as a freelance writer in the late 80s. And then I began to write for Reader's Digest and magazines that were actually fact checking. and so I became, and I wrote for other regular magazines. I wrote for Connecticut Magazine. I wrote for Newsday out on Long Island. I wrote travel stories. So I was searching for the truth.
Okay.
And I would find little bits and pieces of it here and there. And I'm like, oh, I think that sounds like the truth. And then when I came to the Catholic Church, my husband wanted to be a Catholic. And he said, well, maybe we should become Catholic. And I said, I'm not going to join that patriarchal old church.
Why did he want to become Catholic?
Well, we were Episcopalian, and we had gone to Northern California, and the Episcopal Church up there was rather disintegrating, and so there we were trying to find. Again, we were searching for truth, and when we went to the Catholic Church, our priest said, "Get the catechism." We got 2 copies, one for my husband and one for me. And I read that catechism for 3 days straight. I could not put it down. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. This was about truth and love and joy, all the things that I've been looking for were in the Catholic Church. So the catechism was the final kablooey, if you will, but it was a long process until I got there.
So Ellen,
That's wonderful to hear, because that, for me, I mean, I'd already become a Catholic when that was published, but it was such a definitive document you can give to anybody and say, look, anybody suggests that the Catholic Church is irrational, that the Catholic Church doesn't know what it's talking about, it's not, everything it teaches is not connected. Show them that, and if they have intellectual honesty to do what you did and to sit down and read it, the questions are answered there, right?
They are. I read it for 3 days straight, and I was a Protestant, so I would say, oh, where does it say that in the Bible? And then it's footnoted. And you're like, oh, it does say that. And then, well, where does it say that in the Bible? Oh, yeah, there it is. So, yeah, the joy of Catholicism is what led me to write these books. I'm like, a friend of mine, because I knew Okay, at Cosmo, there was one thing I knew at Cosmo, that the women's movement and the sexual revolution were two radically separate movements. Helen Gurley Brown would have loved for her sex magazine to be part of the women's movement, but Betty Friedan, who had launched the feminist movement in 1963 with the feminine mystique, called Cosmo quite obscene and quite horrible. So how did those two get joined together? That was the question that I was asked after I became Catholic, and that was the answer. Both these two books that we answered.
So it gives me great joy to tell you that in 1991 and 1992, I was in the basement of our old office building for 9 weeks, working with 2 other people. And we because the translation of the catechism was a very poor one, and it was actually a very negative feminist one, inclusive language type thing. We actually translated, typeset, copy edited, and indexed the entire Catechism of the Catholic Church and sent it to Rome, and that's the one that you read.
Oh.
We did it in our basement.
Oh, how lovely!
Yeah. So I'm glad to know that effort has such beautiful results.
Yeah, of course it always does.
Of course, we didn't create the content, but I mean, we made it readable and clear and accurate for the American English reader.
Well, as you know, Father, that a poor translation can ruin the truth that's actually being expressed. So if that poor translation had gone through, if you hadn't done that work in the basement, God help us, quite frankly, because that catechism has been such a weapon for the truth in the past 20 years, 30 years now, that thanks be to God.
I would like to go back to not Sue Ellen's exodus from the lie, but how you got subverted in the first place. I remember in your book, Subverted, you tell the story of having gone to Columbia School of Journalism, which is the top-notch.
University of Missouri. University of Missouri.
University of Missouri. And a
Columbia.
top-notch journalism school. Mm-hmm. And how when you first were told to compromise the truth, you blanched at first because that had gone against your good training, your ethical training. But look how easily we get subverted by success being dangled in front of us, right? That well, but if you compromise over here, you're going to get that plum job of writing top magazine in New York City. I mean, that slow process of your high ideals being corrupted by the siren song of success, worldly success.
That's right.
And if you think about it, that's what you explain happened to the women's movement, which started out with all these high ideals. The first wave feminists wanting women's dignity and the vote and education and these kinds of things, but how it slowly gets co-opted by, but if what you want is worldly success, you got to sell out. You got to sell out. And now what you say Cosmopolitan magazine is today, or what the women's movement is today. I mean, how many of us saw or heard about the halftime show at this year's Super Bowl?
Right.
And that was being put forward as an example of female empowerment.
Right.
How is that female empowerment, selling your body for money?
See, that's right. See, that's what we're fighting. See, a lot of Catholics say feminism, I want nothing to do with it. And I understand that. But true feminism is about respect, women's respect and equal dignity. And what we're really fighting is the false joining of the sexual revolution with the women's movement. And that's what I'm talking about in Sex and the Catholic Feminist, is breaking those two apart again. We're fighting the sexual revolution. We're not fighting women's dignity. We're for women's dignity. That was a Christian concept.
Ellen, towards the end of your book there, you express great optimism and hope, which is a good thing. In doing so, though, you mentioned many different groups that are active, that you believe are representing true feminism as it should be. But some of those groups are not specifically women's groups. They're pro-life groups, they're anti-abortion groups, and so on. So how do you see the intersection or the interconnection between groups which are specifically oriented towards promoting the dignity of women and groups that are trying to protect the unborn?
Well, of course, you cannot protect the unborn without protecting the mother, and you can't protect the mother without protecting the unborn. This concept of splitting baby from mother is a false dichotomy. You can't hurt the baby without hurting the mother. You can't hurt the mother without hurting the baby, and you can't hurt either of them without hurting us both. So that's when I went to the Walk for Life in San Francisco and I saw all those pro-life people, I was still, even though I was Catholic, I was still thinking, oh, okay, well, I'm not sure about the abortion thing. When I saw all those people marching and saw how beautiful it was, I realized I had been wrong all along. And the media had gotten it wrong. And I was one in the media that had gotten it wrong. And when I saw that, it was like, now there was a flash for you. There was a flash when I saw that immediately, that was the women's movement of the 21st century. I could not believe.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons, Sue Ellen, I think that the media ignores the Walk for Life and the March for Life is that when you contrast the joy and the serenity and the peace and the love that emanates from the pro-life people, and you compare it, with the militant hatred of the radical opposition, foaming at the mouth with all sorts of obscene gestures. The pictures speak all the words you need. In fact, it's really, you don't need any words. You just need to show the contrast. And I think that again, about telling lies, going full circle back to Cosmopolitan, liberal media know that if they show those two images side by side, it's going to speak for itself.
Well, it does. It does.
Sue Ellen, another thing I'm very happy you mentioned, because I've gone to that for 15 years in a row. I was there at the very first one. It was organized by one of Ignatius Press's co-workers here, Eva Montaigne, along with her friend Dolores Meehan. And from the very beginning, I've noticed the same thing. You go into that Walk for Life, and there's old people, young people, every race is there, Caucasians, Hispanics, blacks are there, cheerful, and getting together, and you just see the love. And you go down Market Street and you see these protesters, and I feel sorry for them. I mean, you look at them; they're sad people. They're people who've obviously been hurt, terribly hurt. But it's just very distressing to see, these people and how angry they are, and how the opposite they are of the beautiful pro-life movement. It's gone on years and years like that,
That's
true. It's a great witness, that Walk for Life in San Francisco.
And these young women, I spoke at the March for Life this year and Students for Life of America. And these young women, I'm not starting a women's movement, a new feminist Catholic feminist movement. They're starting it. I'm just reporting it. And these women were on fire at the March for Life. And they're like, we're in charge and we're going to take charge and we're going to save the babies, and we're doing everything for women, and we've got these pregnancy centers, and they know that they're the feminist movement of the 21st century.
Right, and they're not just interested in saving babies, that too, but they take care of pregnant women. They have clinics for them.
Exactly.
Everything, yeah.
Exactly. They say, well, people say, well, what are we doing for the pregnant woman? They said, we're doing everything for them. We're helping her. We've got pregnancy centers. We've got, we're helping people. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
One of the things I found very joyful about your book was its positive conclusion, where you talk about the feminist movement today. But one thing, if we can backtrack, because we got sidetracked, and that's the nature of a conversation, and I've no problem with that. But you mentioned about the dignity of the human woman, the human person, dignity of women. One of the parts of your books I liked a lot when you talk about Mother Teresa, and you use this paradoxical phrase about Mother Teresa's dignity is not any different from when she's cleaning the toilet than when she's actually receiving the Nobel Prize. Could you perhaps say something about the dignity of woman? what is the dignity of women, and how is that different from the way the feminists may understand it? No, so not the feminists. Correct myself. There's certain radical type of feminists.
The radical feminists, the radical,
Right.
the anti-life feminists, if you will.
Right.
Well, Mother Teresa did not call herself a feminist. She said she was too busy helping the poor. But Mother Teresa, the day she went to the UN, and she was, now see, these women, the radical feminists, are wanting power. And Mother Teresa was introduced at the UN as the most powerful woman in the world. And she got a standing ovation by the head of the UN, who knows power when he recognizes it. Now, what did she do that day before she went and was introduced at the UN and got a standing ovation, as was introduced as the most powerful woman in the world? She went to Mass, she went to adoration, and she cleaned the toilets. And I said in my book, Mother Teresa's dignity was not lowered when she was cleaning the toilet, and it was not raised when she was getting a standing ovation at the UN. She always had her dignity because she knew she was a child of God. She knew her identity. And that's where our identity in Christ is where we receive our dignity.
That's a pretty good place to end, actually. But before we do, I mean, Sue Ellen, we've kind of, Joseph said, conversations wander over here and there, and I help them to wander because I'm the elder person in this group. But are there any kind of final remarks you'd like to make? I mean, there's a wonderful book. We enjoyed reading and discussing it. I hope people watching and listening have read it or will read it, because I think it's kind of a blueprint. And well, first, it shows the history. How did we get where we are? But it also shows how we should go where we want to go, in the next steps. But any final remarks you want to make?
Well, my remark is I thank you so much for having this book in your book club. I'm just been amazed at some of the things you say, and I would encourage everybody to watch all 4 episodes, if you will.
Very good. Joseph, I forget, what are we doing next week? Mercy should come next week, right?
Yeah, Mercy, What Every Catholic Should Know, by Father Maloney. All right, and you can get that at ignatius.com. It's published. It was published this month, so it's hot off the press. But yes, they can get it from ignatius.com. And don't go to Amazon because they're delivering things late. We get it to you right away if you go to ignatius.com. Vivian, any final words?
I just want to thank Sue Ellen for her living witness. She saw this entire thing unfold as an eyewitness and as a reporter, and to have that commitment to the truth, that no matter where it leads you, you're going to get off at the next station. That takes guts and that takes integrity. And I thank you for that, for being that example.
Well,
Very good.
I thank you for caring.
Thank you, Shirley. God bless you. You still got a lot of work to do. Keep it up.
Thank you.
See y'all next week, folks.